This video is supported by patrons like you. If you'd like to become a patron, please head over to patreon.com/MattJarbo. Just $1 per month is a great way to say F you to the Access Media. Okay, so a couple days ago, we got to see the final trailer for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, and it was, well, divisive to say the least. I personally really liked it. I've watched it now at least 15 times. I think mostly for the score. The score is so good, I just want to dive in and never really come up. But I can understand how there are people out there that are still apprehensive about seeing this movie. And right now, we're hearing reports that the day one sales, are through the roof, 45% more than Endgame, according to Atom Tickets. Fandango's come out and said that a lot of people have also bought tickets for it. But some people are saying, especially, I think one person particular, one website particularly, is saying that Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker is tracking for a huge opening, but lowest of the new trilogy. And what you have to keep in mind is when it says lowest of the new trilogy, it's such a negative headline. It's obviously designed that way in order to get you to click on it. When in reality, it's still an absolute buttload of money, but it may not be as accurate as you might think. So what we know about it right now, this is according to boxofficepro, they say here that the opening weekend range is anywhere between 185 million to 225 million. The opening weekend estimate is 200 million for the 3-day, opening on December 20th and going through the 22nd, with the domestic total range of 550 to 750 million dollars. And that's just domestically speaking. Now, the thing you have to consider here is this. When it says December 20th through 22nd, it's also going to take into account December 19th, the early screenings, which by all accounts at this point have been selling out in a lot of places. I know my theater was sold out. I was able to get one last ticket. Another friend of mine invited me to go see it with him later on that night, and he was able to get a couple tickets at the very last minute. So there are a number of people who have bought tickets to this, and as we get closer to its release, more and more people are going to be buying up whatever extra seat they can. And here's the thing to keep in mind. This movie is going to be in well over 4,400 screens, running around the clock in some of those angles and some of those aspects. So scarcity is not a problem. Scarcity is not an issue. And there are people already trying to float the narrative out there that Disney is purchasing tickets. Right? They tried this with Captain Marvel, and none of that was true. They just keep trying to invent new narratives, right? Chewbacca keeps coming out of the woodworks to invent these new crazy "we got it covered"-esque narratives that people tend to run with because negativity sells. Let's just be fair about that one here. But when you look at the other films, when you look at, let's say, Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, we can see here that The Force Awakens had a domestic total of $936 million with a foreign run of $1.13 billion for a worldwide total of $2.068 billion. Think about that for a second. $936 million was the domestic box office. The domestic box office was nearly $1 billion. When you talk about highest grossing film of all time worldwide, that's now Avengers Endgame with $2.79 billion, or roughly $2.8 billion. But when you look at it from a domestic standpoint, The Force Awakens is the most profitable movie ever released domestically with nearly $1 billion. So we come over here to Star Wars: The Last Jedi, we can see that its domestic take home was over $300 million less, with its foreign take home $400 million less, giving it a total of $1.33 billion, which is a far cry from $2.068 billion. That is a little less than $700 million difference. And that is a lot of money that was not made. But it's not uncommon, by the way. It's not uncommon for the middle film in a trilogy to not do as well as its predecessor, but the third film to have a new fan resurgence because it's the end, and then people coming back and checking it out. And I think that is going to be a big thing that happens here. Like I've said, this movie is going to be playing in 4,400 plus screens over the span of that weekend. Many of them are going to be running 24 hours a day. But on average, you're looking at about 5 screens per day, or 5 showings per day per screen. Just do the math on that one. 5 showings per day per screen. 4,400 screens, right? That is a lot. That is an absolute lot of showings every single day. You're not going to be able to walk 5 feet in a movie theater without coming across a bunch of theaters dedicated to running this movie for the first weekend, because that, of course, is going to be when the biggest hype takes place. Now, what I think is going to happen with this, and I'm just being speculative, but what I think is going to happen with this is it might be looking at a bit lower of an opening than The Last Jedi, which had a $208 million opening weekend compared to, or $206 million maybe. It was just a little over $200 million. But The Force Awakens opened in 2015 with $248 million. This movie, if it does the high-end estimate of $225 million, it's still going to be under The Force Awakens, but it's still going to be then better than The Last Jedi. And that is really important when you look at the headlines for what are going to be run, which could then possibly determine whether or not the movie continues to do well. I would think that Joker has consistently done well because, I mean, it was just number one again this weekend. It came up. Last weekend it was number 2. This weekend is number 1. Highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. I mean, Warner Brothers has found completely unmeasurable success with this. It's absolutely insane, and congratulations to them. However, the headlines originally for Joker were, this movie gonna cause some bad stuff. Then the movie comes out, does $96.5 million on its opening weekend, and the headlines turn into, this movie wins. And then all the headlines since then have all been positive. And the movie has continued to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow due to more positive word of mouth, positive headlines, and people still talking about the movie and the fact that it's really, really, really good. Now let's go back to take a look at Solo. Solo opened May 25th, 2018, to the tune of about $88 million. And that was considered low. In fact, after that, they called it a flop. They kept saying Solo flopped because Solo should have done more, because they were trying to say that it should have done at least $120 million. And it came up about $32 million shy. A large reason for that was that Deadpool 2 had moved itself forward by 2 weeks to come out the week before Solo. And that ended up taking another $43 million out of the box office that weekend, on Memorial Day weekend. So that ultimately ended up hurting Solo in the amount of money that it made, because it took more money out of the equation that could have gone to that. And this is why these releases really do need to start spacing themselves apart more, because there's only really a limited amount of money that's available, and people are going to only go so many times. So here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I'm saying with this one here. If, let's say, for example, right now, ticket sales are a little bit lower than people are projecting, right? If it's coming in lower than Last Jedi, but it's it's still could potentially jump up there. Here's what's going to happen. If the movie is reviewed well, not by critics necessarily, because they went over to The Last Jedi like they were trying to get it late on prom night. They were sucking up to that movie so much. But if fans come out of that movie and they go, it was better than The Last Jedi, it was serviceable. It was serviceable. And if it's serviceable and people come out and they feel good about it, they're going to talk at least moderately positive about it, which is then going to have, I think, a solid word of mouth ripple through a lot of people. And that's going to get them to the theater to go and see it. The people who saw Solo, a lot of people who saw Solo after it came out, because they just avoided it in theaters, they saw it when it hit Netflix. And I've talked to many, many, many people who have seen Solo for the first time on Netflix, and they were like, man, that was actually a really solid movie. I'm kind of bummed I didn't go see it in theaters. And if that mentality applies to them, then these people might go back and see The Rise of Skywalker. And I think that if there's good word of mouth, then that number is going to go probably north of 225 million. Is it going to cross the 248 million domestic and end up beating out The Force Awakens? No, I don't see that happening, but I do see it pulling in more than the 208 million or 206 million that The Last Jedi made. Because again, positive word of mouth means people are going to want to go in and see this movie. And I think that people who have even been adamant Last Jedi haters and are anti-Star Wars right now, if their friends come back, if their family comes back, if their online peers come back and they go, dude, the movie was actually all right. It was actually pretty decent. Like, I actually had a lot of fun with it. Like, I mean, it was as good as we were going to get at a Disney Star Wars right now, but it was all right. Then they're also potentially going to go and see it with them. Because here's the thing, curiosity killed the cat. And at the end of the day, if all of your friends like something, your family likes something, and people are speaking positively about it, even though you may have a little bit of trepidation, the likelihood of you actually going and seeing it is relatively high. Peer pressure, especially when going to see movies, is a mofo. And if anyone out there really likes it, then they're going to want to go see it again and again and again. And repeat viewings is going to really push that movie up. JJ did it with The Force Awakens. Johnson clearly dropped the ball with The Last Jedi, but JJ looks like he's really going to try to bring it for this last movie. And that's where I think things are going to be at. I'm not worried about these headlines if it's going to open lower than Last Jedi, because I don't think it will. I don't think it will. I think it might have a bit of a slow start right now as people are perhaps apprehensive or still trying to maybe figure out their schedule. And then as we get closer to its release, more and more people are going to get hyped for it. And then more and more ticket sales are going to start happening. And this is really when Disney's going to start laying out the marketing for it. And that's going to really put a lot of butts in seats. So we're talking about a 2-month forecast out. Things are likely to change. Case in point, 2 months out from Joker, I believe Box Office Pro had Joker tagged to $60 to $90 million. And it came out above that, despite all the negative headlines and all the negative press. So something there to consider. Anyway, your thoughts on this, really want to hear them. Let me know down in the comments below. If you guys have become one of the new patrons, I really appreciate it. Thank you again for supporting the channel, and I'll talk to you all later. Have yourself a fantastic day. I love you lots, and peace out.